walking through the parades
Right.
with the veterans. And then they tell you a little story, and it puts you to tears.
Well, it was so traumatic, and not only that, but now the story doesn't end there. But I had befriended a young man, and I forget his name now. I wish I knew his name. And his uncle was one of those actually who was killed, who was not rescued. And so I got to know them very well. I got to know the families. In one case, I remember I went to the home, and they had already purchased the coffin. And they had cleared out the living room, because this is where many of the funerals were held. And it was one of the ones who was rescued, so you can imagine the trauma involved in that. And then we went to the hospital. Now, one of the most poignant stories, and this is a story that was exclusive.
Let me just go back to
Sure.
for a second.
Yeah.
This was the second group. After the explosion and so forth, there was the accident, the cave-in, and then they
Yes.
found some people.
Immediately, almost immediately, they rescued 80 men.
And then it was about 6 days waiting before...
Seven days. 1 week later, and they rescued 12. Okay. So at this point...
People were told, and a lot of people were feeling that their sons had gone and their husbands had gone.
Don't forget, there's 94 down there, okay? So they rescued 12. So... And most people at this point give up. This has been a solid week. The men obviously would be injured. There's no water. There's no food, etc. So hope is abandoned, virtually. Most of the press goes home. In fact, as far as I know, I think everybody from the press went home. And by the way, one of the visitors to the site was Prince Philip. He came over from Britain and to try and raise some money and so forth. But so we now, after they've discovered these men, the 12, and all the joy and everything else, we've got 12 people rescued. The press essentially goes home. I stayed for another day because I still had some hope. And United Press International, I was costing them so little they could keep me there for a little bit longer.
Okay, now this is
Yes.
very important for the interview.
Yes.
Let's take you back about 2 minutes before. Where were you standing, or where were you at the time that you heard that they heard this noise and they said there's more people alive?
I was
Let's just go back to that.
Yes, the press was set up in a sort of an office headquarters, and they just accommodated us everywhere. I had a little mattress that was on the floor. I slept on the floor, and it was pretty primitive. The communications. The only means of communication I had then was a phone. And I had to shout. The connection was very bad, so I had to dictate my stories on the telephone, shouting into the phone back to Montreal. And I had a number of first-rate stories. I had the front page of the New York Times, etc., etc. All right, so we've got the 12 men rescued 1 week later. This is a great miracle. Now, the press, most of it goes home. I wait a day. And then I drive back, get a cab back to Moncton to catch a plane the next morning. At 4 o'clock in the morning, about 4:30, I get a call from this friend of mine, the young man that I had befriended. He said, "Lowell, they have found some more." So this is an international scoop for me. I immediately phoned UPI, this is about 4:45 in the morning, and said they have found more. We're not sure how many. And so I immediately rushed back, and I essentially had the whole thing to myself. They found 6 more men still alive, which was a double miracle. Now, the most incredible story of all in this, James, is the Hunter brothers. And